I got into a car accident. In the last second of my life, I found out that the son I had adopted for years was actually my wife's illegitimate child. When I opened my eyes again, my wife was standing in front of me with the kid once more. "Honey, can we adopt him?" "No," I replied. "Let your mom adopt him. He can be your brother." The day of the accident was supposed to be a fun family picnic. Tina, my wife, was driving while I sat in the back seat with our son, Leo. Right before we exited a tunnel, Leo mentioned that his door seemed loose. I leaned over to check without much thought, unbuckling my seatbelt in the process. Before I could even find the issue, the car went out of control and crashed. Instinctively, I shielded Leo from the broken window glass, but without a seatbelt, the impact flung me out of the car when it rolled off the highway. As I lay dying, I overheard a conversation that sent chills down my spine. "Mom, is he dead?" Leo asked. "Don't worry, he's definitely dead," Tina replied, her voice cold as a stranger's. "Great. Can we bring my real dad home now?" "Not yet," the woman said. "Let's deal with his funeral first." "Oh right. Then there's the insurance money. Mom, once we get the payout, let's go on a family trip abroad. Dad always wanted to visit Korea." "Sure, whatever you and your dad want." My anger couldn't stop the life slipping away. In the end, I unwillingly closed my eyes. Maybe it was heaven's pity, but I found myself reborn on the day Tina brought Leo home. Everything could still be changed. This was the 7th year of our marriage. Tina came back from a business trip with a little boy in tow, the Leo the first had cherished in my past life. Seeing how familiar and close Tina's mother seemed with Leo, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Turns out, everyone knew but me. Tina handed the boy to her mother and took me to the living room. "Ben, I want to discuss something with you." In the living room, Tina told me about Leo's tragic childhood. He's 5 with no known parents, raised by his grandmother who recently passed away, leaving him an orphan and homeless. She said she felt sorry for the kid and brought him back. In the past, I was moved by this story and quickly agreed to adopt him, praising Tina for her kindness. But now, knowing the truth, I wasn't about to go along with it. Tina continued her act, appearing conflicted, trying to convince me. "Honey, can we adopt him?" As she spoke, her mother peeked into the living room. What a convenient timing. I smiled at her, my voice gentle. "No, let your mom adopt him. He can be your brother." Tina's face fell, like she had swallowed a fly, awkward and taken aback. "Don't say that. Mom's too old for that." From the next room, Tina's mother looked on nervously, having heard every bit of my conversation. Before they could argue more, I rubbed my temples. "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep." I lay in bed, sleep nowhere in sight. How could I have been blind to the malicious thoughts of the person beside me? Thinking about how Leo was already 5 meant she cheated on me right after we got married. Tina's dad passed early. Her mom raised her alone, and when we first met, Tina's family still had debts. I didn't care because she seemed honest and kind. We agreed, right after marrying, to focus on our careers and hold off on kids. Then Leo appeared. He was well-behaved, adorable, and seemed genuinely innocent. I welcomed him wholeheartedly. However, when I wanted a child of our own, Leo acted out, running away several times and narrowly avoiding accidents. Tina's mom packed up, crying they'd move back to the countryside if they were in the way. Tina, acting torn, insisted we'd wait for Leo to grow up first. It drove me to a mental breakdown. Looking back, it was all a scheme, these 3 ruining my life on purpose. In the night, a tear slipped down my cheek. The accident and the insurance policy, all to kill me for money. Was it all a plan from the start? Was he Leo's real father Tina mentioned? Who exactly was he? It was Saturday. I woke up early. Leo was already sitting on the couch, well-behaved. When he saw me, he politely greeted, "Hello, Uncle." I stared at him for a long time, then reached out to pinch his cheek. Leo froze, not daring to move. When Tina saw me, she looked startled, rushing to stop me. "Ben, hurry up and eat breakfast." I let go, leaving a faint red mark on his soft cheek. Such a cute child. I smiled, ambiguous. Tina couldn't hide the concern in her eyes as she went to comfort him, patting his head and sitting him down for breakfast. After we ate, Tina brought up the adoption again. "I'll think about it," I replied, casually, as I grabbed my stuff and headed out. Once I left the house, I made my way to the city library. Tina loved this place, which still used an old system where every borrowed book had a card showing the borrower's name and date. I planned to check the children's section, knowing Leo loved reading. In my past life, he had mentioned classics he supposedly read at a neighbor's house. I had a gut feeling Leo's reading interests could be linked to Tina. She used to lend me her library card sometimes, so what she borrowed wasn't a mystery to me. Maybe it belonged to his real father. Eagerly, I checked the borrower's cards in different books to see if any names appeared in the same books Leo loved. Among the unfamiliar names, one made my heart skip: Eric. Could it be him? Just a name doesn't prove anything. I get that. You need more evidence. When I got home, I saw Tina's mom cooking. I didn't jump in to help like usual. I used to never lift a finger in the house. Housework was mostly for the maid. But since Tina's mom came, because she was trying to save money, she would always insist on doing chores. So, after some convincing from Tina, I had to let the maid go. "Ben, Mom thinks this house is yours. If she does some chores, she'll feel more at ease," Tina said. "Yeah, our marital home was bought by my parents. The house is under their names." Tina's explanation sounds nice, but Tina's mom is her actual mom. I wouldn't feel right bossing her around. So, whenever I saw Tina's mom cooking after work, I always helped out. In the end, the chores were still mostly mine. But today, I just didn't feel like helping. Tina's mom clearly was miffed. The cooking got louder. After dinner, hearing Tina's mom washing dishes with more clatter, Leo very sweetly said, "Uncle, Auntie, I'll help Nana wash the dishes. I do it a lot at home." I patted Leo's head. "No shouting like that. Tina's mom is still young. Calling her Nana makes her sound old." Leo didn't expect that. He's still just a 5-year-old. He nervously ducked behind Tina. Just then, Tina's mom came out of the kitchen, saw us on the couch, and started rubbing her back, whining about being old and sore. I wasn't buying it. I played dumb and went along. "Yeah, sure, you do look older." The kid didn't really miss with that Nana call. Tina's mom's lips twitched. I finally acknowledged her as the kid's grandma, so she was worried I'd take it back if she denied it. But agreeing still bothered her. She had her kid early. She wasn't that old. Over the years, her life got better with us, and she loved dressing up. She was always praised for looking young, so being called an old lady didn't sit well. Tina perked up. "Ben, you agreed to adopt Leo. Let's go talk it over." "No need. I have a friend who's familiar with adoption stuff. I'll just take the documents over later." Tina knows most of my friends are department heads, so she relaxed. Thinking about the name she blurted out, I casually said, "Hey, the kid has your last name." "Huh?" Tina's smile faded a bit, growing cautious. She nodded. "Yeah." "Whose name? The dad's or the mom's?" I pressed. "The grandma. She raised him alone." Tina seemed ready with that answer. "So he doesn't want a new name. Just keeping it as is, right?" "Yeah, that sounds good," I nodded. "You're the best, Ben. So kind-hearted." She leaned in for a hug, but I sidestepped. Tina awkwardly smiled. I locked myself in the bathroom and got on my phone. I had paid for a virus program on Tina's phone to monitor it. I couldn't wait to check her messages and calls. Then, among nearly 4,000 contacts, I saw a familiar name, Eric. He's listed as a colleague. No chats between them. My hand shook a bit, clenching my fist tightly for a while, before clicking into Eric's account. His profile pic should be him, and his posts were pictures of himself. Just regular life stuff, not a kid in sight. But I was convinced. There's no such thing as coincidences. Early Sunday morning, Tina got called back to work. She barely had a bite before leaving. Tina's mom saw my leisurely pace and couldn't stand it. She snarked, "Tina's got it tough." "Huh? Can't even rest on weekends." "You're lucky." I swallowed my bite and brightly smiled back. "It's all because I'm a grad from a good school." Can't help it. Just a lucky life. Tina's got limitations, and you couldn't give much support, so grinding away is all she's got left. Tina's mom turned red and white. Her chopsticks froze mid-air. She wanted to argue but couldn't. Everything I said was true. I just never laid it out like that for them before. After breakfast, I went to my parents' house. Almost forgot the date. Mom had to call to remind me. It was today. Mom decided to transfer the house to Tina and me. Though Tina never said anything, her actions showed she cared. Every time she partied or worked late, I tell her not to push it. We earn enough to live comfortably. But she'd say she wasn't comfortable living in my parents' house, wanting to give me a real home. I was so touched, telling her not to think that way. My parents never thought less of her. Plus, I'm the only child, so no need for such fuss. But she wouldn't have it, always working so hard. Over time, my parents worried the house might affect us, so after years, decided to give it to us. Back home, seeing Dad taking his usual load of pills, I swallowed my pride and kept my complaints in. My parents are old. Telling them about a love child could be too much. I came up with an excuse to delay the house talk. Dad looked puzzled, but didn't press it. When I got back home, Tina's mom, all smiles, but her tone sneaky. A big shot has returned. Huh? Off the grid all day. Good thing dear Leo helped me some. I didn't raise my head, but shot back stealthily. Busy some must. Papers won't just fall into place. Tina seemed cheered, rushed over to grab my stuff. Her mother wasn't as patient, asking eagerly, with a much nicer tone. All the paperwork's done. Leo can now be on our household registration. I glanced at her, humming softly. Do you think these departments are like your family businesses? Just put him on there, no problem? You couldn't get someone to help, so I had to ask around for favors. When I snapped back, both Tina and her mom looked a bit offended. In the past, I always tried to accommodate them, worrying about their fragile egos, and never spoke of what I did. But they took everything for granted. Tina quickly recovered, acting like nothing happened, and invited everyone to sit down. Ben's right. These procedures aren't something you can wrap up in a day or two. I sat on the couch, tiredly rotating my neck, and started my prepared spiel. Even Mike couldn't handle this easily. He estimates it'll cost some money to pull strings. It's necessary. Tina researched adoption procedures herself, knowing they're complicated, especially with the kid having relatives around. So, she didn't doubt what I said and asked how much it'll cost. $500,000. What? Tina's mom was the first to jump up, mad as ever. Is he robbing us? Why does such a small thing cost so much? Isn't he your friend? Or is he just scamming you? Although Tina didn't verbalize her support, she didn't disagree either, clearly agreeing with her mom. Unable to stop myself, I chuckled a bit. In the past life, Mike burned through a lot of money to help me with this. I spared Tina's mom and Tina the stress, covering the cost from my own pocket. But not this time. Forget it if it's too expensive. Mike doesn't want the money. It's for greasing the wheels. If not, just raise the child as is. Why bother with formalities? The $500,000 was a number I threw out deliberately. Most of our savings went into investments and term deposits with Tina, and we couldn't easily touch them. We didn't have that kind of cash flow. This money was Tina's mom's savings, meant for her retirement, which she's been holding on to. She never had a formal job, so no pension. Ever since she moved in with us, she's been lamenting about her unfortunate life in front of me, envying my parents. They'll have hefty pensions and live well in retirement. She used to love saying that. Even when Tina and I assured her she'd be taken care of, she'd still walk around with a gloomy face. Left with no choice, Tina discussed with me, thinking we should give her mom a monthly allowance of $10,000 as her pay for helping around the house. She called it our way of being dutiful. Truth be told, I wasn't keen, but after their persistent coordination, I caved. Besides, with our incomes, $1,000 wasn't going to break the bank. And so, Tina's mom saved up a tidy sum. But now I had to pry it out. Leaving the three of them with varied expressions, I retreated to the bedroom. Pulling out my phone, I checked on Tina again. She still hadn't messaged that guy named Eric. I guess it's time to drop by Tina's office. The next morning, breakfast was a bit awkward. I remembered how, in the past, Leo had already started trying hard to impress after I agreed to adopt him. But now, after my detached responses, he barely dared to speak a word when I was around. Tina's mom watched, feeling sorry, gobbling him with food at every meal. He couldn't leave the table until he was stuffed. And I just smugly watched the whole scene, never interrupting. Back when we first took Leo home in the past life, I took him in for a full health check for the sake of his health. The doctor said his blood sugar was high. If not addressed, he might end up with diabetes, need lifelong insulin, and his growth might be affected. I took the doctor's words seriously. I enforced a healthy diet and routine for Leo. No indulging in high-calorie foods like cake and fried chicken. I even signed him up for basketball and swimming since he liked them. But to Tina's mom, my actions were seen as depriving the kid of good food, or worse, mistreating him. She was convinced kids don't get diabetes and doctors are just fear-mongering for profit. Leo seemed scared of me too. Even Tina voiced some complaints at times. But for the kid's health, I kept explaining patiently. Eventually, even though Tina's mom didn't understand, Tina believed me to some extent. Under my careful attention, Leo grew up healthy. Remembering all this, I glanced at Leo wolfing down fried chicken and drinks, and shifted my gaze. In this lifetime, I wasn't gonna interfere. I'd watch to see how Leo turned out without my care and intervention, just by your love standards. Before leaving, Tina stopped me. She had discussed it with her mom last night and decided they'd shell out the $500,000. It's just that our money's in the bank, her face peering pleadingly, hinting I should take the lead like before. Maybe use my money or ask my parents for help. In the past, she'd maneuver her way to make me fork out the cash for countless situations. Someone sick in her hometown, or wanting a new car, or just to impress her boss with a gift. In no time, she'd burnt through my savings, and only then did she stop asking. But now I stared back, silent. Noticing my silence, she complained slightly. We can't ask Mom for money, can we? It's hard enough for her to save. Then forget it. Regardless of household registration, he's still yours, isn't he? I hinted with my words. Tina hesitated, and I laid it all out. Consider the finances carefully. I need to get back to Mike today. By the afternoon, Tina called. She said both she and her mom agreed to use her mom's $50,000 savings first, but would repay her once our investments matured. Of course, I happily agreed. Anyway, there's no chance they'd be waiting till then. At noon, I left work early and headed to where Tina works. In a past life, she used my family's resources to climb in the financial world, eventually becoming a general manager. They say you shouldn't get into finance without family backing, but Tina was determined. Before meeting me, she was nearly fired for poor performance. I reached out to my friends and family to help her bring in business to stabilize her position. In the end, she turned out to be a backstabbing betrayal. During lunch break, I went straight to Tina's desk. She looked surprised to see me, since it had been almost 3 years since I last visited her. During those days, I'd often come for lunch and to meet clients with her. Back then, she said something like, "Ben, when I know you're visiting for lunch, I can't focus on work. You're my biggest distraction." Her affectionate words worked on me, so I stopped interrupting her day. Now, seeing me unexpectedly, her face showed a fleeting panic, but she asked, "What are you doing here? Can't I visit?" I shot back. Her face quickly composed, and she smiled nervously. "I'm just surprised. Let's go grab some lunch." She wanted to leave quickly, but I wasn't about to make it easy. "No need, I ordered delivery. Should arrive soon. Let's eat in the downstairs lounge. Lots of employees have lunch there." Once we sat, Tina subtly asked why I came by. "Checking up on me?" I grinned. She chuckled awkwardly. "Never, I'd welcome it." The lounge filled fast, and suddenly, I saw Eric, sitting not too far from us. Tina seemed calm, occasionally glancing at Eric. I said loudly enough, "Aren't you pregnant though?" Eric dropped his spoon in shock. Tina instinctively looked over but quickly recovered. Around us, people turned their heads, But Tina dared not. Her poker face didn't fool me. She leaned in, whispering, "Ben, I'm not just teasing," I whispered back. Confused, her perfectly pointed features twisted slightly. Satisfied with what I'd learned, I focused on my meal. That guy had to be Eric. Tina got home late that day, probably explaining to Eric. But I'd had a busy afternoon. I got Tina's mom to withdraw $50,000 in cash for me and gathered plenty of intel on Eric, a finance officer, a position often strictly against inter-office dating, while Tina was in marketing. Later, at home, during dinner, Tina's mom looked concerned, not saying much until she held her grandson and sighed about the $50,000 they'd saved getting wiped out. "We poor folks work so hard for so long," she lamented. Sensing her hopes that I'd go to my folks for money and eventually return hers, I quipped, "Well, it's your grandkid. You'd think you'd spend a little more willingly." Seeing her face fall, I feigned innocence, turning to Leo. "Your grandma's spent so much on you. She's hurting." Leo looked confused, ready to cry. Tina's mom rushed to comfort him, denying my tease. I chuckled at the chaos I sparked and left after dinner. On the day before Valentine's, Tina said she had to travel for work and wouldn't be back that night. I was aware it was Eric's birthday. Last year, he tweeted about not wanting to be alone for his next birthday. I remember that time. I had invited Tina to a piano concert, but she mentioned chasing a big client late into the night. I didn't let her go, promising to help her secure another deal. So, this year, she's definitely spending Eric's birthday with him. "Don't worry, I'll be back for Valentine's," Tina assured. I smiled her out the door. That night, Eric's Twitter updated with him expressing gratitude and subtle happiness. On Valentine's Day, even before Tina returned, I saw photos of her and Eric together, dressed like a couple, staying at a hotel, seemingly happy. I thought seeing that would anger or hurt me, but it didn't. But when I actually saw all of it unfold, I felt completely calm. I understood that all of my sadness and anger had morphed into hatred after that past life car accident. I just wanted them all to pay. Leo's adoption papers came through. With a bit of careful steering and misleading, the neighbors didn't assume it was me and Tina who adopted him, just like in the previous life. Tina's mom was playing with the child outside the kindergarten and greeted me when I returned. "The papers are through, right?" "That's a relief. I was just telling them, I'm finally a grandma," she said. I had previously told her to keep quiet until everything was official, so she wouldn't jinx it. She managed to hold it in until today before talking to her friends. Tina's mom was all smiles, urging me to show the residency proof. Our neighbors gathered around, but as soon as we opened it, her face changed. In the mother column for Leo, her name was written. What's going on?" she asked. I feigned surprise. "Maybe it's a mistake by the staff. How could it list you as his mother? We should have them fix it. This isn't right." Tina's mom was visibly anxious. I put on a concerned look and said, "It might not be easy to change. Plus, it could take time. Leo needs to enroll for the spring soon, and a delay might affect that. Can't we just let it slide? We're all family anyway." Neighbors chimed in, "Right, it's just adoption. Whether he's listed under you or your kids doesn't matter. Actually, putting him under you is better. It avoids potential complications for your own son and daughter-in-law's children." Honestly, they found it odd that the couple adopted a child anyway. This twist actually made more sense to them. But Tina's mom kept insisting, "It's just not right." I teased, "You're too young to be a grandma." Friendly neighbors laughed, bringing Leo over from the playground. "Hey kiddo, this is your mom now." Leo, who had been getting chubbier lately, looked up, puzzled at how grandma had become mom. Just then, Tina came back from work, and a neighbor pointed at her. "Look, your sister's home too." As Tina stood there looking utterly shocked, I almost burst out laughing. After the little drama, it was just the three of us back home. Although it seemed like only I was in a good mood, my falsely upbeat attitude concealed the chaos. Grandson turned into son into brother. Naturally, they couldn't digest such a bizarre switch. I tried to comfort them, "Let's just let him start school. We can fix it later." They weren't happy, but there wasn't much choice. Afterward, Tina's mother was reluctant to take Leo out anymore. If she did, everyone would coax him to call her mom. To avoid the awkward titles, Tina preferred not going out with Leo, a stark difference compared to her previous eager mom image, taking him to school or the amusement park. The reason for such a big change wasn't just about names, though. It also had to do with work. That evening, Tina came home, looking tired. After hesitating, she finally spoke up, breaking our silent treatment since Leo's paperwork issue surfaced. I knew why she came, having lost big clients, by people I once counted as friends. "Ben, aren't they your friends? Can you talk to them?" I shook my head. "Didn't you ask me not to interfere with your job? So I stopped contacting them." "Didn't you manage it well?" I added fuel to the fire. She had once benefited from my connections but feared people would criticize her for it. Now she wanted my help again. Her face turned sour at my words, and she left, frustrated. She was under a lot of pressure trying for the VP role, and with the clients disappearing, she looked worn out. So, I decided to drop a significant gift her way. I told Tina I arranged a meeting with an important client at her workplace. She readily took me along. When we got to her office, I could tell from the odd stares that my gift had been received. Oblivious, Tina was still smirking to her colleagues. "Cover for me in the meeting later. I have a major client to entertain." A co-worker glanced at me, whispering, "Did your brother-in-law send them?" Tina's face showed annoyance. She didn't want to admit any reliance on her husband. Finally, a male colleague couldn't take it anymore, pulling out a stack of photos from the trash and slamming them on the table. "Some people climb up by their husband's connections, then cheat. That's repugnant." "What are you talking about?" snapped Tina. "Photos plastered everywhere, even in emails." "Still denying it?" he said as he threw the photos on the table and walked out. By this point, Tina realized something was wrong. As she surveyed the colorful expressions of her coworkers, a wave of unease hit her. Peering at the floor, the photos laid all over showed her intimate moments with Eric. She couldn't bring herself to make eye contact. It was as if time had stopped, until Tina's boss arrived, summoning her with a less than friendly tone, breaking everyone from the stupor. I maintained a shattered, lost demeanor after metaphorically slapping her, leaving with car keys in hand amid solemn stares of sympathy. I drove home, singing, spilling recent events to my parents. "Tina's been unfaithful, has a secret kid. We're getting a divorce." They were shocked but calmed down upon seeing my level-headed mood, opting to fully support me. I sent Tina both a paternity test proving she and Leo are linked, along with divorce papers, then cut off all contact. I don't need her apologies, and I definitely don't want to hear her excuses. I know Tina won't agree to a divorce. She has nothing. Once we're done, she won't even have a place to stay. But as her clients started to slip away and her efforts crumbled, she realized something. She finally got in touch with me, agreeing to divorce. I set up a meet at the divorce office. On that day, friends and family were with me as I went to the county clerk office. It had been a while since I saw Tina. She wasn't like her old confident self anymore. I watched her get off the bus, looking rough, clothes all messy. That's because I took our car. When she saw me, she was silent for a long time, eventually forcing out a couple of tears. "Ben, I'm sorry. Can you listen to my explanation? Leo was just an accident." She was still struggling, but I didn't have the patience. "Enough, let's just sign the papers." She stood there, hesitating. I smirked. "What, you have an issue with the settlement? Ben, we've been married for so many years. Do you really have to be this ruthless? The agreement says I leave with nothing. What else? Don't you deserve that? The house is my parents', the car is theirs too. You've been secretly using our shared assets to support your lover and illegitimate child all these years. You should be grateful I'm not asking for damages." My voice wasn't quiet, and people around us started looking over, staring at Tina with disdain. "But, no buts. If you sign, I'll stay out of your client affairs." She was there because she was desperate. Because of the cheating scandal, she had no chance for the VP position. In a company banning office romances, Eric had to quit to protect his job. The whole family relied on her, and she had some high-end clients connected to me. With the pressure I put on, she had no choice but to show up for the business. She didn't want to lose me as a money source, but the company had given a strict order. She had to deliver results by the end of the month or face a pay cut or even be fired. Eventually, she signed and we were officially divorced. After receiving the divorce certificate, she tried to say more. I raised my hand and slapped her hard. "This is for what you owe me." Stunned by the sudden slap, when Tina saw I was going to hit again, her reflex was to fight back. But my friends held her down, so the second slap landed. "This is for what you owe my parents." And then a third slap. "This one's for being heartless." Afterwards, I noticed my hand was shaking. In the madness, Tina's mom, Gertrude, and Leo came over. It was a big commotion, with Tina's mom yelling the loudest. She cried out for me to return $50,000. 50 grand? I had no idea about that. I made sure she withdrew the cash herself with her card. How was that on me? Tina's mom realized she was tricked and tried to hit me, but she got stopped. Eric started chiming in, "You're too much. I know you hate us. You're calculating since day one, taking all the money left by Ruyan, and now you're taking the old lady's money too. Aren't you scared of karma?" His appearance didn't faze me. No way I'd let him off easy. Soon enough, his face had a red handprint as well. What I took was mine. "Without me, she's nothing but a pauper. If you cherish her, just keep her." Covering his face, he tried to speak again but was yanked by his hair, yelping in pain. Things got chaotic once more. When security separated us, every one of Tina's family was hurt and disheveled. Tina pointed her finger at me, threatening. "Ben, you knew about Leo all along. Huh? You're really something, going through all this just to make sure I leave with nothing. I just returned you to where you came from, back to having nothing before you met me. But even this isn't enough. I knew they wouldn't leave the house easily, so I sold it cheaply to an agency. They sent folks over, trashed everything, threw them out, and warned them to stay away from there. It was a big show, even got filmed and went viral online, stirring up more talks. Homeless, they had to move into Tina's tight company dorm, under 200 square feet, squeezing in 4 people. It's tough, but they had no choice. Occasionally, I'd check out Tina's phone with some software I set up before, finding she rarely goes home these days. Eric had become hysterical, arguing over family issues and money troubles. Tina's mom called Eric a curse, blaming him for their current life. Eric fought back, turning Leo against his grandma. Tina was caught in the middle, miserable. She even started writing me letters, hoping for reconciliation. But soon, she'd long for the noisy life she had. What finance company doesn't have dirty secrets, especially with massive cash flows and deals involved? I sent evidence of Tina's wrongdoing, bribery, and tax fraud in expense reports to the headquarters. After the investigation order from HQ, the local branch quickly pointed fingers at Eric, the finance guy, and reported him. After all, their shady relationship raised suspicions of secret dealings. When they were arrested, I also filed a report with my family's support. I suspected Tina and Eric conspired for insurance fraud. I'd unknowingly had 2 accidental death policies, both naming Tina as the beneficiary. I even provided Tina's secondary phone number as proof. I found out about her secret second line when she and Eric had 0 communication on her usual phone. I knew she must be keeping things quiet. After gathering evidence, the police quickly confirmed the 2 of them committed the crime. They had detailed plans on that private phone number about how to kill me and make it look like an accident to collect insurance. The cops showed me all their chat records. Because of what I knew from a past life, I was certain they must have been plotting for a long time. What I didn't know was they had already tried once when Leo was just born. Fortunately, I survived that time, so they became more cautious. Going through their fragmented chat logs, everything became clear to me. How those 2 met was actually pretty simple. Back then, Tina had just married me. I was more educated and came from a better family, and she felt inferior. She chose me thinking she'd be saving herself 20 years of struggle, but her friends' teasing really got to her. So, when her new coworker Eric showed interest, she took the bait. She kept a lover outside, thinking it put her above me somehow. The countless chat records show her repeatedly mocking my naivety to Eric. But when Eric wanted an official title from her, she flat out refused. She bluntly stated she married me to secure my family's wealth, knowing my wealthy parents wouldn't let go easily. That's when the vicious plan surfaced. When I left the police station, it felt like an eternity had passed. Everything was settled. I didn't attend Tina and Eric's sentencing. My dad told me they broke down in tears, blaming each other, claiming they were bewitched by the other. They saw the other as the mastermind and ignored courtroom decorum, yelling profanities. Meanwhile, I was getting ready to move abroad. I had a great chance to get a promotion and raise, but I had to transfer to the overseas headquarters. I used to give up opportunities like this for family, but now I was determined to seize it. My parents were already retired and decided to move abroad with me. When I heard Tina and Eric's sentences, life imprisonment and 15 years respectively, I felt nothing. They deserved it. Before leaving the country, I took my parents for a medical checkup. We ran into Tina's mother and Leo. Leo had turned into a short, dark, pudgy kid. A complete contrast to the energetic boy he was before. And Tina's mom looked noticeably older. She was causing a scene with the doctor, accusing the hospital of scamming her. She denied Leo could have diabetes. Her words angered the doctor, who sternly warned that Leo's condition was severe and without immediate treatment, it could be life-threatening. A bystander, seeing I was watching them, kindly filled me in. She said the two had been there several times. Initially, because Leo suddenly vomited and fainted. After tests, the doctor had diagnosed him, but they didn't believe it. This time, his condition worsened. He fainted on the street and was brought in by a good Samaritan. Even the police were involved. Plus, their relationship was bizarre. The lady looked older, Leo called her grandma, but when the police checked their identities, they were actually mother and son. The onlooker guessed they weren't from a decent family. I just smiled and stayed quiet, watching as Tina's mom finally conceded, slinking away with Leo. It didn't take much thinking to realize they wouldn't pursue treatment. Tina's mom was ignorant before, and even if she understood now, they probably couldn't afford it anyway. As for what happens to that kid in the future, that's no longer my concern. After finishing the checkups with my parents and getting the results, I quickly booked our flight tickets. Sitting on the plane, looking at the blue sky outside, I felt a long mist brightness inside. As the plane slowly left the ground, I knew past events shouldn't occupy my time anymore. My future should be vast and full of endless possibilities.